Hello and welcome to the Magical Midlife Podcast, where you get a refreshing, uplifting and optimistic perspective on life in your 40s and 50s. I'm your host, Lindsay de Swart, and I'm delighted that you've joined us here today, so let's jump right in. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to season 3 of the Magical Midlife Podcast. I'm so delighted to see you and so delighted that we can even say that we're here at season 3. This is awesome. So today I'm very delighted that my opening guest for season 3 is Kay Turner. And Kay and I have met because we both have had the same shamanic teacher. So we've both been on some very interesting journeys. And so hopefully today, Kay is going to talk a little bit about her journey and tell us all about how she now has walked into her magical midlife years. So good morning and welcome, Kay.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. It's delightful to see you. And now whereabouts are you? Where are you in England?
We're in rural North Yorkshire, so do forgive any bar or cock-a-doodle-doo that you hear, because it's very loud, even with closed windows. So it's very, very rural. The nearest town is tiny, but the village probably only has 100 people.
Oh my goodness.
I know, it's minute. And originally I'm from the northeast of England, from the county of Durham. So have moved a little bit south, but still North UK.
Mm-hmm. So what's your the biggest town, big town?
The biggest big town is York.
Right. Oh, okay. Fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, which is beautiful. Or Durham, actually. I'm kind of in between those two cities that people may have heard of.
Yeah, very nice. Well, I went to university in Sheffield, so I spent many years in Yorkshire.
Oh, right. So actually not that far from here.
Not that far at all. No, absolutely. No. Anyway, cool. So now we know where you are. That is lovely. And I have pictures of hills and sheep and cockerels and things in the background, which is a lovely image to have. So tell us a little bit about who you are, Kay.
Okay, so I am a teacher by profession, mm-hmm. and I still work in the teaching forum, but the 3 words I think that sum up the work that I do are education, evolution, and embodiment. And I facilitate that in a massive variety of settings, focusing really on supporting people with metacognition, so thinking about their thinking, intuition, and instinct. So I do that through facilitation, through teaching. I still go into schools, but also through writing, which has been the big project in the last year.
Fantastic.
That's what I do.
Now, so when you started out your career, is that what you started out doing? Or did you start with what did you start out doing?
I started in theology. So I was brought up in a very high Anglican church, and my path was always going to be priesthood in the Anglican church. So I then went and studied theology at university and started the path into priesthood, but knew I was too young at 21. So I did a teacher training and went into secondary schools and taught RE and health education. I had 3 children, and very quickly, 3 in 3 years, and I do everything fast.
Apparently so. My goodness. Yeah.
And then, so I was out of teaching, and then when my youngest was maybe 14 months, I decided to do a master's in theology. So I went into that. As you would. I'd like to keep my brain busy. Yeah. And toyed at that point with writing, but felt, there was financial demands as well. So I went back into teaching and then went on the leadership path with that. So became a curriculum pastoral leader in secondary, worked specifically with sixth form, which is the 16 to 18-year-olds in the university transition. But the change came because of ill health and the perimenopause transition. So that started around 37. And there was a slow deterioration in my health that was really messaging that I was out of alignment.
Right.
And that that was really the catalyst that moved me into a different path.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did that show up for you? What challenges did it
present? Chronic migraine, chronic pain, chronic fatigue. But I am quite stoic. I think it's probably one of the downsides of living in Northern England.
I was going to say, that's a Northern English trait, isn't it? Big style, yeah.
It is. And I just kept on going. I was going through a really unpleasant divorce, single mum in leadership and education, ploughing on, didn't take any day off sick. And then on the 23rd of December in 2015, I fell over and shattered all of my front teeth.
Oh,
really
wow.
serious and a really serious injury. Still went back to work with huge wound and had roots. I read surgery in my dinner. I mean, I was mad.
I feel quite faint, actually.
Yeah, you didn't know this, did you?
I didn't know any of this. Love this. Wow.
And then one day I just couldn't get out of bed. So probably a month or two after that. And then I had to be off sick. So no, not a day off sick. And then signed off. And I went into a shamanic death. That's how I describe it. I still feel emotional thinking about it because my own children were like, what is going on? I went out into nature and I just sat with fire and I just received so much download into that's not your path. Visions that are actually manifesting now. So this is 7 years later. And then I took voluntary redundancy and off I went on a different path.
Oh, my goodness. So how did you know? I mean, when you said there was the shamanic death, which obviously looking in hindsight, you realise that's what it was. I mean, how did you know to just go in to be in nature and sit with fire?
I didn't know. It happened. I shut down. So you can imagine all my energy. Well, there was very little energy flowing through me at that point anyway, but I couldn't do anything. So it was, I mean, I've never been told I had a nervous breakdown, but I could imagine that was happening in the nervous system. But it was, the only thing I could do was keep warm and sit outside by a fire. It was like just a complete embodied knowing that's what I had to do. And I was scrying and writing. And I did that probably for about 4 months. I started to work quite deeply with trauma therapists because I had a lot of trauma from childhood, really a lot of excavation into the past, and mindfulness therapists. So I started very conventionally in my healing. And then every time I kind of started to be well, the next path unfolded, the next teacher arrived, the next knowing, the next book. And I just followed it and kept going, moved through. Would you like me to share the path?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, please.
Yeah. So trauma therapy, going to the police about a sexual assault when I was a child. So really going through that process. Lots of boundaries with family of origin, working with EMDR and...
What's that for people who don't know?
Eye movement, desensitization.
Right, yeah.
Something like that. I can't remember.
Thank you for the reminder.
The kind of brain come together from the traumas. And then it was, okay, energy. What is this? Reading books, starting to bring balls of energy into my sphere. I trained as a yin yoga teacher. I trained as a wellness coach. I also, and this is going to make you laugh, alongside doing the shamanic and energy medicine training, I was also in the ordination process again for the priesthood. So they were running side by side, because the holding on to the patriarchal trance of the church was the final thing for me to let go of. And I had to be rejected by them.
I was going to say, because that's more traditionally socially acceptable.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Wow. So I did the energy medicine and the shamanic path, and then, was working now in my own business, coaching, and teaching about energy medicine, but then the feminine came through me and I was called to the priestess path. So my teachers, I also did a lot of nervous system work. So I've done a lot of embodiment work, but then my priestess path came through and I went into Rose lineage, the Magdalene lineage, and now work in priestessing as I see it as female leadership, so, you know, kind of representing the feminine in the world.
Wow.
And so that's where I am now.
Fantastic. Now, very interesting, something you said about the next book would be presented, the next teacher would be presented. Can you remember some of the books that really helped you along your way early on? Very
much so. The book that changed everything was given to me by a friend's sister-in-law who was a fibromyalgia nurse, because I'd been given the diagnosis of fibromyalgia, and it was Mind Over Medicine by Lisa Rankin.
Oh, I've heard a few people mention that.
Yeah. And she's a obstetrician, I think, in the US, and she's produced a model called the Whole Health Cairn, and it just gave me a model of health that was not only allopathic, it had that in it, but it had holistic in it too. So that was the formative one that changed. It had everything. Science in it. I loved it. Changed everything completely.
Yeah. So how did that then affect your relations with friends, family? Because of course you were going off on this, you know, discovery path, shall we say, which is not exactly standard run-of-the-mill route for any teacher. So how did that affect all your social connections and family?
I don't have any relationships currently with my family of origin because of boundaries that had to be put in place for me to clear the energetic net of a storyline that wasn't healthful. That's probably the best way I could put it appropriately. So that was really a terribly challenging time, and also a massive grief. My children, it completely transformed our family life. I mean, financially, we took a huge loss. I was in leadership. And I remarried in 2016, I think it was. I should know, shouldn't I? And so
well, hopefully you were there for it.
Yeah, I was there. It was there was only 6 of us. Very happily. I mean, that was a gift. That was my marriage to Dan is a gift. It's part of the healing process. But there was he was thrown into a family with children, and I was well and healing. And so that really strengthened our relationship, actually.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a gift. And
so had he known you kind of through this journey?
He is the journey with me.
Wow.
I'd say he was probably one of the catalysts of the journey, bringing that real depth of love into my energetic sphere, made me open to the trauma that needed to move through me. I think that was it was all synchronized and universally aligned. I could not in a million years have made this happen, or bring him into my life at all. So yeah, that he was part of the path that the gift to me. And then the children had to adapt to a different mum. And I had to adapt. Yeah, that was a challenge for them, but it has been transformative for them.
I was going to say, how has your journey woken up your children?
Oh, hugely. To their individuality, to their autonomy and their sovereignty, because there's very minimal codependency in the dynamics now that I think I was knitted in the family of. So yeah, that was a big transformation. And friendships have been a really interesting observation. A lot of it has just fallen away, like, autumn leaves. There's been a few conflicts where people have gone, I just don't get what's going on with you. But I've let that go. And really good friends have come with me and seen the flourish. And then new friends have come into my sphere.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So I'm just going through my questions here. So who's helped you along the way? Obviously your husband, Dan.
Yes. My children, the Gaia, nature. And then teachers, Irene Lyon, she's in Canada. She was my nervous system rewiring teacher. Her programs were formative in me not only spiritually bypassing and coming at the head level and the spiritual level, but coming into the body and making this vessel strong enough to bring stronger energetics through it. So that she was formative.
Sorry, say her name again, because you just broke up just as you were saying her name.
Sorry, Irene Lyon.
Irene Lyon. Okay, cool. Yeah. It sounded like the Green Lion.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which might be the case.
It may well, yeah.
Yeah.
She's great. Her programs are great. Worked with a lot of somatic experiencing therapists, too many to mention. Her husband, Seth, was one of them. And then obviously our shamanic and energy medicine teacher, CZ, and my priestess training was the Priestesses of the Rose, Achintia and Amaya. They are fabulous teachers. So they've really helped me. But then the universal energies and Gaia, I think, are the two mentors that have been
that really stuck with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So as we ground all of that into the real world, how do you now function in the real world, you know, with kids going off to university and, as you say, you know, you still got to earn a living and all that sort of stuff. So what do you do now in the real world, in your whole new self?
That's a really good question. And when I was thinking about coming on, how I do so much, because I do have a tendency to like to be in the spheres of the cosmos,
fair enough.
and the spiritual realm, that I work hard to stay grounded. So in the past year, I still teach. I taught a student with autism. So I work for the medical service teaching. I still go into schools and deliver staff training on well-being, and also I do anxiety work with sixth form. So I do wellness work. And then I facilitate at a local retreat and do one-to-one wellness and energy and shamanic medicine health sessions.
Yeah, and I have benefited from one of those sessions, absolutely. So can highly recommend a session with Kay if anybody's interested to know. Yeah.
Thank you. And then this year, last year I piloted a girl empowerment group. So with teenage girls, trying to bring some of this into that 13 to 18 bracket. And I'm moving into sacred feminine teaching this year.
Okay.
And then the book, the writing for Girl God, which has just exploded.
So tell us about that, because I keep seeing posts about it, and it just I know you're going through, you know, another transformation as this is birthed.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the experience of what's led you to this book, and how is it being birthed, really?
Yes. So one of the books that came through in that shamanic death, when after the accident, was that I needed to write about trauma, because trauma has been my path so much in terms of overcoming that. And I initially thought I was going to do further study, but I knew that I wanted it out into the world, and the part that Goddess, the feminine, the body, plays in trauma healing. And so I approached Girl God in the new moon in January and pitched the concept of a trauma and goddess book. And she agreed. And so this is going to be an anthology, this book, Remembering with Goddess, it's called. And we are showcasing women's experiences and voices, as Girl God do brilliantly. Their anthologies are fabulous, around trauma healing. So, but then from that, there was just millions of books. You know, there's one coming up on perimenopause and menopause journey and the crone energy and how that is. There's one coming on neurodiversity. That's the latest one that I pitched and that they're going with, which is fabulous. And then there's my own book, which I'm researching at the minute, which is called Making Love with the Divine. And it's sacred and ecstatic and erotic and mystical experiences, and how people experience the divine in the ordinary, in the day-to-day life, the mystics of now.
Wow.
So that's what I'm writing myself right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm seeking shares. If anybody wants to contact me with their experiences of the divine, whatever that is, I'd love to receive stories to weave into the book.
Fantastic. So have you had any stories yet that you can give a sort of a sneak peek? So if somebody goes, well, I don't know if I'm experiencing the divine or not, is that me? I don't know. Can you kind of outline it a little bit more so that if anybody does know that they've been going through some big changes, because lo and behold, COVID has woken quite a few people up to a whole different world. What sort of experiences might they be having that they could then share with you for the book?
So probably the most shares I've had so far around communing with nature. So communing with the divine through nature, that sense of there's something bigger than me. Right. So the divine is something that is other. The sacred is other than the mundane. And so people say, you know, there's been a huge uprising, for want of a better word, of people doing wild swimming here. And there's a lot of sense of, oh gosh, I'm going into the water. I feel like I'm connected to the water. The water's flowing through me. I'm flowing with the water. Connecting to the seasons and how that affects energy is being with the divine. But the making love element is how we bring the energy and expand ourselves with an energy that is beyond us. So it can be, let's say, the moon cycles affect people and they feel more expansive and loving or creative at full moon or at new moon. And what is that like? Or they may get straight dreams, right? That the love is coming through them in their dreams. So dreams, nature, walking are the most prominent ways that are being shared.
Yeah.
Fantastic. As well as dancing, you know, or yoga or meditation. Of course, there's all those things, but it's how do you feel there's something other than just your human self?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So, and when do you think that book's going to be coming out?
Well, I'm hoping for shares throughout September. It's all anonymous. So, you know, some people will share sexual shares and that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And then who knows? My plan is to have it written next year. So 2023, I'd imagine.
Right.
Definitely by then.
Yeah.
Definitely by then.
Okay. So is there anything you missed from your chapter 1 life?
Financial security, I'll be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
You know, the promise of a teacher's pension. It was very much ingrained into me. You know, it's one of the best schemes in the UK and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So, and also day-to-day interaction with young people. You know, I did not leave teaching because I didn't enjoy interactions with 14 to 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
I miss that. Their quirkiness, their aliveness. And then seeing a young person who get it or expand, I miss that. And I'm hoping that somehow that's going to come back into my sphere, but how will it come back? I think it will. It is. I do miss that. Very
Fair
much.
enough. And so what do you see, because obviously you're going through, you know, these midlife years and kids going to university and that sort of thing. So how is that now changing how you live your life?
More boundaries.
More boundaries. I was going to say, or is it just quieter?
More boundaries. I mean, it's freed up a lot of my energy.
Yeah.
My children are 21 and 19 and 18, so they're pretty independent now. But it's that freeing of the energy, and I embraced perimenopause. You know, it's not easy. The physical symptoms are hard, really hard. But I am embracing it and allowing it to empower me. And there's a great sense of this is who I am now. This is who I am. Oh, okay. It might not necessarily be what the mainstream is we're seeing in womanhood, although I don't agree. I think a lot of it is we're told how to be at perimenopause and menopause. And actually, That's something that we can change if we live a different way.
Yes.
For me. So I'm trying to model a different way of perimenopause and menopause with people, midlife change. And I would say this has been the best time of my entire life.
And this is the whole point of the magical midlife. And that's exactly the whole reason that I started this podcast, because as you say, we are told how to experience perimenopause and menopause. And actually, my belief is it's almost like a second puberty. It's a massive awakening into the next stage of life. And I think because people didn't understand it, and maybe they didn't know what to do with it, therefore it's become something of, sort of shame and doom, and you must medicate through it, etc. So when you say that you're embracing perimenopause, what does that look like?
I'm embracing the emotion of it.
Right. Okay.
And harnessing it as a healing. So I listen more to it. When I started the process, I was like when the puberty happens and the hormones rage, and also the rage comes through emotional. So it was absolutely catastrophic, some of the ways I behaved. It was pure rage. It wasn't even anger.
Yeah.
And it obliterated. But I refused to look back on it with shame, because I was doing the best I could.
Yeah.
And actually that needed to go through, that energy, that fire needed to move through all areas of my life. So now I can harness that more. I know my no's, I know my yeses. I prioritize rest and self-care and nutrition, and what it is of comfort for my body. And I'm allowing it to burst that which I couldn't at adolescence, the self that was conditioned at adolescence. And I agree, it is a second adolescence where we mop up and undo that which was put on us in our first. So I think it's fantastic what you're doing, and I agree wholeheartedly. That's certainly my experience.
Yeah. And that's what I'm just, some of the things that you've just said there about, really going with nutrition, the rest, listening to your body, allowing the emotion to flow. So many people in all of our interviews that are willing to go there have, when they've allowed that in and they allow giving themselves energy, putting their time and energy into that, they are really the ones who've walked into this new life almost of being themselves, giving themselves permission to say, actually, no, I'm having a real off day, or I know that I really need this certain nutrition. Listening to that, tuning into that, and waking up to that, and allowing the given world to go on hold for a bit, just whilst they realize who they are and what they need. And it's such a permission. So, I'm so grateful that you brought that up, Kate. What a lovely start to season 3.
I'm glad.
That's so cool. Okay, so obviously I'm always conscious of time, because I know that we all listen to podcasts driving around or out walking. And so there's kind of an optimum time level that you can tune in. So how can people get hold of you if they want to either offer stories and shares, or if they want to follow the work you're doing and actually be able to get some of your books as they come out?
Absolutely. So the website is www.anotherlogonthefire.com. So it's all one, there's no spaces, anotherlogonthefire.com. And it's on Instagram and Facebook, Another Log on the Fire, and Twitter. So please do. I'd welcome any shares and followers. And just to say, the reason that it's called that is because of that shamanic death and the fire. And my youngest son came out and he used to sing around the fire in this song, put another log on the fire. And so that was why I just kept it as a concept. And that stoking of the inner fire is the reason. So another log on the fire, just search it. And the email is anotherlogonthefire@gmail.com. So it's that as well.
Fantastic. Oh, that's awesome. Kay, thank you so much for sharing with us and for taking the time out of your day and taking a break from your chickens and sheep and all that. We didn't even touch on chickens and sheep. When did you start the chickens and sheep? Like,
they're not mine. They're the neighbour, and literally their fence is just. We have sheep on one side, the farmer's field, and the chicken, but they come in the garden. So I have the best of nature without the responsibility. It's fabulous.
Okay. You've got the answer. Oh my goodness, that is the way forward. Excellent. So thank you so much for your time today, as I say, and for sharing your journey and for being so open and honest about, where your journey's taken you. Knowing that people go through trauma and come out of the other side and that we have tools to deal with it, I think is just so reassuring to people as they are going through this, this kind of menopausal wake up.
Yeah.
So if you've enjoyed today's episode with Kay, please go in and tune into Another Log on the Fire and support Kay in the work she's doing. And also come over to follow my work on soulfuladventureliving.com and find me obviously at Lindsay de Swart. Please share this episode if you think you know anybody who's going to benefit from the information and the, it's not even advice, just the inspiration that Kay's shared with us today. Please make sure that you share this podcast, send it to your friends, because as I say, the midlife years have been given a bad rap for too long, and we're the only ones that can change that. So thank you so much. I'm going to say goodbye. Kay, let me hand over to you to say goodbye.
Thank you so much, and so many blessings. And I'm so pleased that you're doing this work. I fully support your work. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And enjoy your day, everybody. And please go and step wholeheartedly into your magical midlife.